Welcome back to the Cameron James channel, subscribers and viewers. Today we're going to be talking about MyExpatSIPP transfers out and a definitive guide for UK residents. My name is Dominic James Murray. I'm CEO and founder here at Cameron James for nearly 10 years now. A lot of experience in dealing with non-UK resident SIPPs. We see a lot of change in the industry and we see the winds of what's happening with stuff. So we decided to do a video on this. I have Jonathan Laws, our senior advisor, joining me for Richmond this morning. Jonathan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you.
Very good. All right, let's get straight into it. So, Jonathan, if you were to be holding a MyExpatSIPP and you were considering to be doing a transfer out for possibly various reasons, what would be some of the most important things that you would want to do due diligence on your new SIPP provider and, typically speaking, non-UK resident SIPP provider? Because I think the large majority of people working with a company that specialises in expat SIPP are non-UK residents. So what would be your top list of things that you would want to ask your new SIPP provider or financial advisor in terms of the new SIPP that you would be joining?
Yes, so good question. So as a financial advisor, first thing I'd be thinking of is, regulations would be very important. Typical retail clients, probably thinking more along the lines of fees, which is also, again, very important. So in regard to the regulation point of view, the first question would be, hey, are you properly authorized to, service someone like me who lives in France, for example? And a lot of times that question will be because, they've spoken to some of the big providers in the UK who won't accept them or used to accept them and no longer will. And you want to make sure that actually this firm is all above board and keeping abreast of all the local regulations so that you can be there long term and not fall afoul of anything applicable to you as a resident in those countries. So that would be the first thing. And then obviously, it comes down to the second part, which is obviously fees. So, beyond the standard sorts of fees, admin fees, platform fees, then you're looking at transaction fees. So, for example, do you charge a fixed fee per transaction? Is there a percentage-based fee? Are the bid offer spreads? How big are they? Because, when you use a really big provider, the AJ Bells of the world, the bid offer spread's tiny because there's, millions of transactions. It's really small. When you use smaller providers out there or smaller platforms, the spreads might be wider, which means, it's more expensive to buy and you get a worse value to sell. So again, really important because these are the hidden fees. If something's dirt cheap platform fee, but then it's incredibly expensive every time you buy and sell something, then ultimately you can end up paying even more than the firm that's got higher platform fees but much lower bid offer spreads or transaction fees. So that's a really key one.
And John, just on that point, sorry to overspeak you, but just on that point, how would you advise a client if they're researching, say, another non-UK resident SIPP, if they were considering a transfer out from MyExpatSIPP for any reason? How would you suggest they go about obtaining or confirming that information about the new SIPP provider? Should they be doing that with their financial advisor or getting their financial advisor to be confirming that to them in writing, in connection with the non-UK resident SIPP? But if you were a client, how would you want that confirmed for you so you're sure verbatim in terms of what your charges are going to be, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. It's like anything in life. Someone can say whatever they want over the phone, but just until you get it in black and white in writing or an email that, the proof is in the pudding and you've got that, level of comfort there. So yes, invariably, if you're sort of looking at moving elsewhere or you're just doing any sort of transfer and you're a non-UK resident, there's a really, really, really good chance that you're going to be involved with a financial advisor or using a SIPP that requires a financial advisor. So I would be asking, hey, Mr. Financial Advisor, hey, Mr. Or Mrs. SIPP provider, what are these fees? Put it in a bullet point list and get them to confirm it in writing. So over email and go, yeah, this is our typical spread. This is our platform charge. These are our transaction charges. Get that in writing. Really important. And then on the types of transactions, obviously what we haven't mentioned is for a lot of non-UK residents, what's going to be really important is foreign exchange, currency conversion. Again, these are the types of hidden charges that all of a sudden take something that was really cheap and makes it really expensive. And a lot of, the non-UK resident SIPP providers and the ones we use as well, they charge really low. They've done everything in their power working with providers, but of course through economies of scale to get really low cost FX transfers done. Even, big household name UK providers don't get rates as low as these. So, that's a really other key thing to look at. And again, a lot of times that's not disclosed on the sort of standard fee schedule. And that might be because it's quite high and you're not going to like what you read, or, they're trying to not cover it up, but not be as forthcoming because they know it's not going to be as enticing as you might like. So again, another thing you really want to confirm in writing through an advisor, through the get from the SIPP provider, and get confirmed.
I actually remember one of the non-UK resident SIPP providers we were working with had a FX charge of 0.07%, which was quite literally the interbank rate for FX. I mean, even if you use TransferWise online, TransferWise, which I'm familiar with, it's around 0.35% cost, and that's one of the lowest cost. I mean, FX in the UK can cost a fortune with your bank, but there's a lot of non-UK residents that have gone out of their way to be like, we are not going to profit in any way, shape or form. They're not going to try to lose money. Oh, sorry, I was on mute there.
Sure.
I was just saying that I've even known non-UK resident SIPP providers to go out of their way to make sure that they are in no way profiting from clients moving from, say, GBP to USD or Euro, whatever it might be. I remember one non-UK resident SIPP was 0.07%. Which is even cheaper than, say, the likes of TransferWise, which is one of the cheapest in the industry, 0.3 or 0.4 on transfers. So I think these are really important costs because, for example, if you have a client in Europe or a client in America or a client in Canada, wherever it might be, you may well be wanting to hold a portion of your portfolio in US dollar or your retirement income euro. If you're moving from GBP to euro and the cost of that is actually quite high, say you have a £500,000 pension transfer and the FX charge is 0.5% or 1%, that's actually a hell of a lot of money on that £500,000. 1% would obviously be £5,000. Those costs can obviously start to add up over the course of the year, or the course of the years, I should say. Jonathan, just to go back to one point before, bid offer spreads. Now, obviously, hopefully most people watching this are, people who want to get on with their lives, enjoy their retirement. They don't really want to go into the levels of this, and maybe they didn't study, finance at university or whatnot. Could you just give a very quick 30-second or 60-second summary of what is a bid offer spread? Why do clients need to be concerned about it? And how can this impact their final retirement value if there's been multiple, say, portfolio updates and stuff over the course of the years?
Yeah, so a bid offer spread is essentially the difference between the buying price and the selling price. Big household name providers, really big funds, etc., will typically have a very narrow bid offer spread because there's so many people and everyone's competing away the offer spread. Smaller providers, smaller fund names, etc., less competition, smaller stockbroking firms, etc., will charge a larger spread because then that's how they earn their money. They get that money between the spread. So you want that spread as narrow as possible. And if it's a big wide spread, that over the long run, that can add to thousands. So it's really important that you figure out, what's the average bid offer spread, especially if you're going to be buying, funds, because that will have a material impact on you. So yeah, difference between buying and selling, you want that as narrow as possible. And again, these are the hidden charges. I've reviewed, I'm not going to name any names, where people have gone, it's a nice low cost platform. And I've gone on and I've said, hang on, that's not the fund price. Jesus, blasphemy there. That's nowhere near what the intermarket rate is. And it's because it was a small stockbroker, really wide bid offer spread. They took huge effective commissions. That's what it is. They get their money on that bid offer spread. And actually, they ended up getting it at a really terrible price because, the stockbroker had no competition because they were the only stockbroker or market maker, as they called them, involved.
Yeah. And I think this is a really important point because, for example, here at Cameron James, we don't have a policy of, every month we're buying and selling and trading, and every quarter updating portfolios. Not at all. We have our low cost, mainly ETF driven portfolios, keeping the cost down, buying the world, having very good performance, obviously past performance, no guide to future performance. But even at the beginning, even if you have a strategy like you have £500,000, that's £500,000 you're putting into the market. There's a cost or a transaction charge. A lot of non-UK resident SIPP providers will have a fixed charge, £7.95, £5.95, whatever it might be. But when there's a bid offer spread in the background that's quite high, say on £500,000, again, it can be a big charge. And the problem is, say you have an existing portfolio of £500,000, keep a really simple example. everything is invested in one S&P 500 fund. The fund is worth exactly £500,000 or 500,000, 100, whatever it is. On the point that you sell that fund, you go onto your platform, whatever, you sell down that fund, it takes time for it to go into the fund house, takes time for it to be sold. The final price of what it's actually sold at in the background as a retail customer, you're never going to know, really, because you don't know at exactly what point it was traded. You don't often get a statement to say it was traded on exactly this time, at exactly this date, and this was all the underlying stuff of the bid offer spread. You just see it update on your portfolio. Oh, the £500,000 has now gone from the fund into cash. Oh, it's £2,000 or £3,000 up or £2,000 or £3,000 down. People say, oh, maybe the market moved, maybe the market went up or down. But that can also be the underlying charges, which aren't necessarily, even for us as financial advisors, when we're doing a deep dive on some people's non-UK resident SIPPs that we think are actually very expensive and have hidden costs and charges, we refer to them, it's difficult for us to ascertain. We have to go and look at the market rate for that day, etc., etc. So for retail clients to try to really understand these things is very difficult. So yeah, it's very often the adage that sometimes in this industry, pay cheap, pay twice, compared to just working with a SIPP provider that offers a reasonable cost for the platform, but actually is very, very transparent about the other bits and pieces in terms of charges. John, what would be your experience then for anybody who's currently with, for example, if someone has a MyExpatSIPP and they're considering a transfer out, maybe for XYZ reasons, for anybody who has another non-UK resident SIPP where they maybe feel like the charges are quite high or whatever it might be, what would be your advice to them in terms of steps, due diligence, and action to take?
Yeah, so, ultimately, you don't know whether your charges are going to be, well, A, you don't necessarily know what your full charges are, so that's a key point, but B, you don't necessarily know how relatively high or low those charges are in comparison to the market. Like, when you move abroad, you are going to have to accept the fact that you are no longer the part of the mainstream. You are a niche client or a service user. So you're not going to have these big household names for myriad reasons. They can often no longer service non-UK residents. So you are going to first have to accept that fact that those super low cost providers you see, certainly for the time being, are not going to be available to you or at those levels. So start the process. Speak to advisors who deal with this. Type in international SIPP, type in non-UK resident SIPP, speak to advisors who cater for people in your country and ask the question, hey, I've got a SIPP with blah, 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 or I've got a UK pension with etc. I'm looking for options, and go and talk with them, do a fact find, let them go and find out all this information for you, have a properly regulated person get this information, because fundamentally you probably don't know what you don't know. Like we're talking with these bid offer spreads, like we're talking with FX, perhaps it's interest rates on cash, whatever it may be. These are all things, you want to get answers to. That will be any part of any sort of, fact finding and due diligence process from a regulated financial advisor where you live, who will get this information together, aggregate it all, figure out what it means, put it together in percentage and relative terms, and then compare the options out there. And it might be the case of where you are is fantastic and you have absolutely no rationale to transfer out. Certainly from a cost point of view, there might be other reasons, regulatory, access, etc. But from a cost point of view, there might not be one. But again, you don't know until you don't know. Have a regulated advisor to work with who will help you find out.
Yeah, and as I say to all of our clients, whether the only time there's ever a charge for initial advice report is for the pension transfer specialist as part of two advisable on DB pension transfers. For all SIPPs, non-UK resident SIPPs, all conversations with ourselves, our advisors, the advice reports we put together, we say it's free of charge for our clients. It's not free of charge for us, but we put our best foot forward for our clients, say, look, here is a fully fledged, authorised and regulated advice report, transfer rationale, 5-year performance, total cost, all possible costs that you could be charged inside your plan. We've even had some clients say, Jesus Christ, guys, you're a bit molecular with the cost. You make yourselves look really expensive compared to other firms because you actually outline all of the costs, but I like that. We put that report together, you read it, you receive it. If you turn around and think, oh, Cameron James are a bunch of jokers, or don't know what they're talking about, or why have they got 235-star reviews, they're rubbish, absolutely your choice. You can say, no, I'm going to work with someone else to do what I want. But read that report first. Understand from an expert what our advice would be. You can then even go away and compare that in the marketplace if you wish to. Jonathan, thank you for joining me this morning. I will let you get back to your day job of Cameron James. But yeah, thank you for your input this morning. It's really, really valued, John.
Yeah, more than welcome. Happy to help.
All right. And as always, viewers, please take care of your UK pension assets. Thank you.